Welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Now, you know her and love her. Justine McIntyre is a regular contributor to the Big Five that we do at 9:05 every morning on the Elias Macko Show. She's a former city councillor and a strategic consultant. This week, her name is in the Montreal Gazette. I'm going through the Gazette, and lo and behold, I see an opinion piece published by the one and only Justine McIntyre. And it talks about, I'll read you the headline, "There's nothing elite about environmentalism." And it looks at the situation, the contentious situation that we're seeing over the fight on Camillien Houde and what to do with Camillien Houde Way. So I saw this piece and said, let's get Justine on the program. Justine, thanks for coming on by.
My pleasure.
So, Justine, listen, I got to say something off the top. I love that you're on because I know we can have a healthy debate here. I disagree with your piece so much. I'm like, I
thought you might.
Yeah, and I do. And so, well, first off, make your case here. Give our listeners the Coles notes, and then maybe we can jostle a bit. What at the core, what was your opinion piece in the Gazette about?
Okay, my opinion piece was basically inspired by another opinion piece, which was Tom Mulcair's piece that he wrote on the same topic. And again, like Tom Mulcair is somebody that I have tremendous respect for. And I know that he comes on CJD, daily and does his political piece, and his opinions are well-informed and interesting. And when I saw the title of his piece, it made me jump because he uses the term elitism to describe the closing of the Camillien Houde Way over the mountain. And, we can have different opinions on, and I know we have very different opinions on whether that was a good decision or not. My opinion is that it's moving in the right direction, and we can talk about that. What I didn't like about his piece was the accusation of elitism, and that's specifically what I wanted to address.
So here's why. If I had to choose between the arguments here, why I do think there's a little bit of elitism to a lot of what Projet Montréal does, and why Camillien Houde is such a great example of it. It seems to me that this administration, as if it's a convenience that they value, they'll never attack it. And if it's a convenience that other people value but they don't, they'll go after it. So to me, you know what I think is the elitism, Justine, is when members of Projet Montréal, they will go on European vacations. The mayor of Montreal took her family on a European vacation this summer. The impact of these things environmentally, right? Going on a long-haul flights across the Atlantic. And it's not just the mayor. Tons of members of Projet Montréal, they spent their summer in Europe, okay? And to me, it's this like, this is what we like to do, so that's okay. But you like to drive across the mountain? No. That to me is the core of elitism. When a certain group of people gets to decide what's good for the planet and what's not good for the planet.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you're talking about there is really what a lot of people point out, which is the double standard between a politician's private life and the politics that they're going to endorse publicly. And this is something that comes up with almost everybody, because nobody is 100% virtuous 100% of the time. So I think it's unrealistic to expect that politicians are going to be absolute saints and are going to, be completely virtuous when it comes to their personal lives. And I think you're right to point out that there's a hypocrisy there in saying, well, we need to make more of an effort to respect the environment here in Montreal, but I'm going to go take a vacation in Europe. Sure, there's a hypocrisy to that, and we can talk about that. My problem, though, with calling the actual decision in itself elitist is that it creates a division, again, between car drivers and between everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's fair to say that people that are pedestrians, people who want to have an access to the mountain that is not by car, I don't think it's fair to qualify that entire group of people as elitists, because these are, in fact, often the people who are in that situation because they can't afford a car. Okay, so sometimes it's an environmental choice. Sometimes it's an economic one. Sometimes, if you see a guy on a bicycle, sometimes it's because he can't afford to take a car. So I think what we need to do is to realize that what we're really talking about is access. And it's not about cars. It's about people. It's about how people are accessing that park. And can we do more to improve access? And there, I think that we can have a discussion. We can have a discussion without falling into ideology if we want to talk about access.
So, like if it was hard to access the park by foot or by bike, I'd be singing kind of the same tune. But I go once during the warm summerish months and once during the winterish months, I go to Mount Royal. And I walk, I walk on, and I do the lovely trail that already exists, and cyclists are right next to me. So, there's only one way of going over the mountain in a car, and that's being removed. So I say to myself, well, no, it's not as if it's impossible to enjoy Mount Royal on foot. The vast majority of people get there and go up the mountain on foot. And that's what I struggle with. It's not like, I can see, oh, well, let's make it even better for pedestrians and cyclists. I see that argument. But I think you are attacking, at the same time, you're attacking that group of people that their joy in life is that drive. That's when I have to drive over it, I love it. It's a simple pleasure. So I think that's where the elitism goes. It doesn't suit certain powers that be that you drive over the mountain. Doesn't matter that you enjoy it. So we'll get rid of it.
Well, I think you said the key word when you said to drive over the mountain, because most of the people that are driving over the mountain are not doing it as a pleasure drive. Most people are using it as a shortcut. And that's
both. But that's both.
It's both. But the idea of using a park as a shortcut is something that the administration is eliminating. And it's not just here in Montreal, by the way. I looked into this. I talked to City Councillor Alex Norris, who I know has been very strong on this.
Oh, yeah.
And he actually was the one who brought up to me that this is not just Montreal. We also see it happening in Toronto in High Park. We also see it happening, and he listed a bunch of other cities. But I think it's interesting to look at Toronto. With High Park, they're doing exactly the same thing, because parks are not being used in the way that they used to be. People are not accessing as much by automobile, and we're trying to figure out how can we make the park just more of a natural space for people to enjoy on foot and with non-motorized vehicles like bicycles. And I think a lot of, something that we haven't talked about yet, and I'm going to come back to this point that I made right off the top, is how we access the park. And I think that we have to do more in terms of figuring out, public transit, or can we get people there? Can we get some kind of a shuttle bus or something like that? But I think it's important to mention that access to the park by car is still going to be possible on Remembrance Way. There's still going to be parking at the top. There's still going to be a way for people to get around.
Yes.
So what we're removing really is the transit over the park.
Because the powers that be have determined, well, that's okay. But if you just want to have that joy of a little bit of nature on your drive, not allowed anymore. All right, we've asked Justine McIntyre to stick around because I was really enjoying our conversation over environmentalism and elitism and how they intersect, particularly in this city. So, Justine, thanks for sticking around.
My pleasure.
So, okay, I want to talk about Park X for a bit, okay? Because I think this bolsters my case. So in Park X, there is a huge battle over bike paths, okay? And there have been vocal protests on the streets. This is the kind of thing I love. There's been some other protests in Quebec City streets where it's all the nutsos on the streets. This time around, it's just two groups of concerned citizens with their takes. And when I looked at what was happening in Park X with their battles, and I think we briefly talked about it on the Big Five, the people that were advocating, hey, we need our parking spots. We work and live here. We need parking. If I looked at that group, it was working class, immigrants, the signs, the Pakistani immigrants that live in Park X with their homemade signs. And then I looked at the group that is like bike paths, and it looked like a faculty meeting at Université de Montréal, okay? So to me, Justine, it's pretty clear who are the elitists in this argument. It's those who are like, I don't care which way or how we get it done, but your car's going to go. That to me is the more elitist argument.
So in Park X, okay, so the point that I was making about elitism is I think it's really dangerous to confuse that with an environmental positioning, because I think we all need to be on the same page when it comes to environmental action. But here in Park X, okay, it's really interesting that you bring this up, because there is an appearance, and you're not wrong about this, that the people on the side of the administration are very much academic. They're very much coming at it from an ideological perspective, and there's very little flexibility on their side. So, and I've said this before, it doesn't matter really when you're in power. It doesn't matter if you're right. You can state all the statistics that you want, and they've got some really good statistics to back up why they want to add more bike paths. They talk about the fact that there are very few bike paths in that neighborhood. So there are very few options for the people that don't have cars right now. They want to add those options. They want to make it safe for everybody. All of that makes sense. But there's a lot to be said about tone and about listening to the counter argument, and not just listening to it, but taking it into consideration. And I don't think that they're making that step towards the other side. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the argument of elitism can stick to a certain extent when it comes to how this administration is addressing the actual concerns of citizens. And you said it too. You know, there are people that are going to protest for all kinds of things. We've seen it, a lot of ideological protests going on in the streets. But this is where things get really real. This is where you're having an impact on people's lives. It's tangible. And that's where you get the level of frustration and anger that we're hearing in question period during borough council.
And, you know, listen, I think you've heard me talk about this as well. And I think in the Anglo media opinion circles, I've been the most adamant on we need bike paths. We can't add 10,000 more cars every year to our roads and think traffic's going to get better, right? So I'm on board with that. But when it's the group of people that make six-figure salaries, and so it's couples, they're both in like academic circles, or they're both, people that are in privileged positions wealth-wise. It's always the same couples. They only have one child, okay? They have very few children because they are so well off that they've got all the amenities available to them. They still have a nanny, and they can afford to get on their bike and take 50 minutes to do a task. And the working class family, those families in Park X, they've got 4 children or 5 children, and they need that car to get around. And then that's why I say, oh, guys, I don't know about this. I feel like that's when I feel the elitism label, it kind of sticks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but this is also the problem with needing the car to get around. Like, why do we need a car to get around? And I think that that's what Projet Montréal is going after. And again, I'm not here to defend the administration, but I am here to defend the idea that you absolutely need a car to get around in the city, and to defend I'm not defending that position. I'm attacking that position and saying that I think that is an unreasonable expectation to have on families. Like, there's an expectation. Okay, I have 3 kids. They're big now. But when they were small, everyone was like, oh, you're going to need to get a minivan now that you're having a 3rd kid. And I was like, really? That's a must? Like, I have to go and spend money to get a bigger vehicle so that I can carry around a new person in my car? Like, why is that an expectation that we lay on families? And isn't there another way that we can organize ourselves? And there is. And I think that as a city, we need to provide alternatives to people, and alternatives come in the way of bike paths, but they also come in the way of public transportation. You need to give people a choice. And when you give people a choice, amazing change can happen. So, I feel the pain. I feel the pain of people who are relying on their car. And I think that we need to go through that transition point of changing how people get around, offering solutions, and going through that transition point of transitioning away from cars and back to public transit and walking and cycling.
So this is the issue I have. The issue I have, Justine, is just on how it's done. Like I'm the biggest fan of the carbon tax, and the reason I'm a fan of the carbon tax is that it applies to everything. It's a nudge on the entire economy, slowly but surely. You've got to find the efficiencies, right? But here's how Canada does it is absolutely insane. We have a carbon tax. Oh, but we're going to ban this. Single-use this, we're going to ban. We're going to ban that. You can't drive your car. You can't do this. And that's when you lose. That's when you're picking sides. So, if people were getting rid of their cars and picking up a bike for themselves and their children because of that slow prodding that comes with a measure like a carbon tax, I'd be bravo. I get frustrated because they keep hitting us left, right, and center with a ban, and it feels like it's a morally imposed holier than thou ban on certain things that they don't like. Justine, you got 30 seconds. Wrap us up here.
Okay. But I think that if you give people the infrastructure, I do think that behavior will change. So a parent who is bringing their kids everywhere by car, bringing their kids to school by car, if you give them a bike path, and, magically they're going to see, oh, now I have a safe option, and behaviors will change. So there are different ways of coming at it. The carbon tax for a lot of people is just a little bit too abstract. But if they see a bike path on their street, you give them that option, they're going to take it. And I think that that's the direction we need to go.
Justine, thanks so much for coming on. I love chatting with you.
It's my pleasure.
We'll talk again on the Big Five.
We will very soon.
On Thursday. That's Justine McIntyre.